Have you ever gone to an amazing real estate conference, taken a whole bunch of notes, and then a month later you actually find your notes and you realize you've actually implemented nothing that you've learned? What is going on, guys? My name is Chris Elliott with the Elliott Real Estate Team. In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to actually implement what you learned at the conference and how to get the most out of these experiences that we pay for, that we spend time doing, and how to actually move your business forward. So let's just jump right into it. So let's define the problem. So we all know we go to conferences, we get excited, we're in these rooms, we're on these live casts, and we have these amazing speakers, we get inspired, we take a flurry of notes. But I think we all either consciously or subconsciously know, unless these things actually make their way into our daily schedules, into our businesses, the changes actually occur. Nothing really changes. You just had a fun, interesting, exciting, motivating experience, and eventually that motivation is going to wear off. And the only thing that really stays is whatever you've implemented in your business. And you don't want to be the guy that I was for years, where I went to these events, I would take these notes, I would get inspired, I would get motivated. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, 6 months later, I'm going to the next event and I realize I have not implemented a thing from what I learned at the last event. So don't be that guy or that gal. So let's just jump right into it. Number one, so I would recommend taking some time after the conference, either immediately after, book another night stay at the hotel, block off your day once you get back from the conference, and really boil it down to 3 to 5 action items that you are actually going to implement. So let's go through that. Let's break that down. 3 to 5. So you might have a list of 17 things. You might have a list of 12 things. You might have a list of 20 things that you're going to do and you're going to implement. I promise you that's going to be way too much. And the reality is, a lot of times these things are great ideas, but they're not great ideas for whatever stage that we're at in our current business. So I'd recommend 3 to 5 that you can actually implement in the next 90 to maybe 180 days. I promise you, if you implement 3 to 5, you're going to be in a much better position, and you're going to be, that conference would have been worth it to you, right? Secondly, we need to boil this down to action items. So a lot of times we go to these conferences, they have amazing speakers. Our ears get tickled. They're intellectually fascinating, and concepts and whatnot, and that is all great. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is, what are the action items? What do we actually change in our business to move it forward, right? So I always like to boil it down to action items, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters, is whatever I'm going to actually take action on. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two, get specific. So I was going through this with my team. We recently went through the Tom Ferry Summit live cast, and I was reviewing with my team their 3 to 5 action items that they're going to take. And a lot of times we set these really vague action items, like, hey, I'm going to make more calls. Or I had an agent on my team that said, hey, I'm going to start doing home previews and then door knocking the neighbors around those properties. Great action item, but here's the deal. I challenge her to get more specific. So how many previews are we going to do on a daily basis? How immediately are we going to begin implementing those previews? So how much, by when, and then where is that going to fit in our calendar? If we don't budget that time into our calendar, the reality is, if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. So realize that when we're saying yes to something, we're saying no to something else. So we've got to make sure we can actually fit it in the calendar, because if you're anything like me, like, life's already busy, and I can say I'm going to start doing these new things, but if I don't figure out when in my calendar, when in my schedule I'm actually going to do it, then it simply doesn't happen, right? So point number three, create some regular CEO time. So this was probably one of the biggest game changers in my business. I was constantly working in my business. So, like, doing the calls, doing the meetings, negotiating contracts, all the things we do as real estate agents. But I was constantly realizing that I wasn't spending time working on my business. So these are like the projects that you can't get done in one sitting. These are the ongoing things that we need to work on the business to move it forward, right? So what I finally did was, I realized I could create some CEO time where it was just uninterrupted time where I'm working on the business, whether that's marketing, whether that's systems, whether that's, processes, just things that I know that are going to take some time, that are not going to pay off in the immediate, but are going to pay off in the long term. For me personally, that's 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. It may be too early for some, but like for me, like the kids aren't up, like clients aren't calling, nobody's expecting a response on their email, their text, or anything. And I can just solely focus on what are the things that I need to do to move the business forward. But I would recommend creating that regular time so that way you can work on these projects that you've pulled out of the conference, and also any projects that you hear something on a podcast or read in a book, and you just have that regular time blocked off where you can continue to work on your business. So guys, those are my 3 tips to get the most out of conferences. I hope you found that useful. If you have any comments, throw them in the comments, and we'll see you next week.